All right. What's going on, Brian?
What's up, Mr. Nate?
Here for another episode. And right before we got on, we were talking about authenticity, and we had a pretty good conversation about how people try to control things, and often when you try to control things, they push away from you. Uh, and about how a lot of folks don't understand the energetic or spiritual aspect of us as humans trying to do so many things and not basically what we were talking about before we started recording was how we are programmed so much to control things that we don't realize that we're trying to do God's job and that He's actually the one figuring it all out.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we were touching on the fact that, we actually are impeding upon the natural flow of life and the natural flow that God's leading us on by always trying to be doing things and trying to control the outcomes of things. And I think we touched on it last podcast was, you know, getting out of the way and not trying to control outcomes. We're so attached to an outcome in every aspect of our life, whether it's our purpose, a relationship, a business, whatever it is, we expect some certain outcome when honestly it's like, what are you becoming in the process of it, right? We also touched on seasons. I always say, Wayne Dyer always said that we have seasons in our life. So people, places, things come to our life for seasons. Sometimes it can be long, it could be 5 years, 10 years, a whole life. It could be 1 month. But it's okay because every soul comes into your life, every situation comes into your life to show you something, right? I think the thing I've learned, like I was telling you in the last probably few months, really deeply is that I believe we're actually here just to become our most authentic version and become that natural self that we are. So it's really like know thyself, right? Know yourself deeply. Who are you really? What do you want to do in this life? What brings you joy? And really embody that natural version of yourself and live in a free flow. Like live with what brings you joy. Be your natural self. Let God do all the lifting and moving of what needs to come and go in your life. And like we talked about, you said, we don't really own anything. We don't own anything or anyone in this life, right? Things are temporary. Everything in the physical form is temporary. Our body's temporary. Our soul is the only eternal thing. So our soul comes, in my belief, many lifetimes to experience many different things. And so, like I tell people, whatever comes to your life, see it as a gift because it's there for the moment. And if it happens to be for a long act in the play of life, then great. If it's there for a short period, okay, what did I learn? What did I experience? What fun did I have? And then you let it go and you keep moving forward.
Yeah, one thing I've experienced over the last few years is what I've learned is that one is to let go and let God. That's one of those sayings, right? Because I've been in positions where I've left or lost a job or something, and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? And it always works out. So
Hmm.
oftentimes, the best outcomes that I ever get is when I just let go and have faith and trust that God's like, you might be worried right now, but there's a reason why they say don't be afraid. Like literally especially the last decade of my life, when I go into more of a okay, I'm just gonna go take a step, see what happens, not worry about the outcome. Those are when I've performed the best.
Absolutely.
And I think a part of that too is the more you try to control something, the more it breaks away from you.
Yeah, we were briefly talking about, when we're chasing or forcing something, you're causing a natural counter force. Like I said, Dr. David Hawkins wrote that book, Power versus Force, and I suggest that's a great read for everybody to read. He shows you that basically anything you're chasing after or trying to make happen, you're actually causing a natural counter force against it. So you're pushing it away from you. So I tell people instead of chasing things, why don't you become your most authentic and best version? And then you will naturally attract everything that you really desire, right? Instead of chasing more money, embody the feeling of abundance and you will receive more abundance, right? Instead of chasing love in a relationship, embody love, be love, and then you'll naturally attract the love that's intended to be in your life. But we're taught, especially in the Western world, to go after and go get things. Well, if you go get things, you're basically on that hamster wheel of that endless chase of trying to get the things you want. Just embody the feeling, because what you're looking for is a feeling, right? I want to be loved. Why don't you just love yourself and be loved, and then you will honestly and naturally be loved by everybody else. You want to feel, you want to have more abundance. Well, then feel abundance. Look at all the things you have now. Have gratitude for what you have now, and then you will attract more and more to be grateful for. So why do you need to chase things when all you need to do is become what it is you want, feel that, embody that now, and then you will naturally receive everything you've ever desired, and oftentimes so much more and an even better life than you ever could imagine. Right.
Well, yeah, it's exactly to the point of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. Is that what you have right now in your life is probably what you've prayed for before.
Hmm.
Is exactly what you used to pray for. So that gratitude um, is something that you can work with. But what I've found recently, I've gotten a little reminder of kind of what Brian, what you're talking about is you have to go internal.
Hmm.
You have to sit alone with yourself in a room and be like, okay, what am I doing that's not serving me? What things do I need to cut away from my life, and what things do I need to cut away from my life in order to attract what I want?
Exactly.
That's what
Yeah,
I've learned.
absolutely. Well, the thing is yeah, what I've learned also is the same thing. Is basically what in your life or who in your life is basically impeding the growth that you need and want to experience, right? So if you want to attract better, the more you become better, you're going to naturally attract the things that match that energy. But you got to look at as you grow, who and what in your life is basically keeping you in a space that you were. We were talking about that off camera. Is radical growth oftentimes to other people that have known you from before. We're going to look at, okay, you've changed so much. If people tell you you've changed, it's a good thing, right? You've changed for the better. People have an image of you of who you were at one point in your life or one point in your journey, and because it's comfortable for them for you to be there, they want you to stay there. So when you grow and you know yourself more, you become a more authentic version of yourself. Oftentimes, that's a threat to people, right? When all they if they really understood it, they would say, okay, I'm going to keep growing as well, and maybe I'm going to continue to match your energy, and then we will be in alignment and still be in each other's play, right? But you have to be willing to let go of the people, places, and things that are not fostering that growth and that advancement in your along your journey.
Well, I
Um,
think I think that some of that, what I've come to realize is God has a destiny for each individual person. And what I've learned is that, like what you were just talking about, how when you interact with people and then they recognize that you change, I feel like the closer you get to your purpose and the closer you get to your true authentic self, that makes people afraid. Because in a way, from what from kind of what I've learned is that when you kind of step into that light, so to speak, it brings out their own darkness within themselves,
yes, most definitely.
and
And
it
I think
makes them
oftentimes
afraid.
it makes them afraid because honestly, I think what it is it shows people where they need to grow, right? They're seeing things. That's why they say it's the mirror effect. They're seeing things in you and themselves where they need to grow. So even if it's an aspect of you've grown, you've changed, maybe they're realizing, well, maybe I need to grow more and change more. But that's hard for a lot of people because what is it? You have to face yourself. So like you said, go within, right? Go into the darkness, see the aspects of yourself where you're like, man, I really need to grow in this area. And that tends to be the hardest thing for people to do is look at themselves and be like, what? I'm already not perfect. I'm already not there. No, you're not. We're all growing consistently, and like the rest of this life, that's what we're going to be doing is growing. Like I tell people, you're never going to know enough to be like, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything. I don't think so. I mean, maybe you can get to that place, but I know that I learn stuff every day. And it's kind of like you said, even the things that I thought I had a good handle on, sometimes I'm like, wow, I still have a whole lot more to do in this area, right? Um, but again, that does show other people when you grow to a different space and you're no longer where they are, because typically they say you attract what you are, right? So initially, usually when you meet a person, you're both in a similar energy and a similar state. And then if you're continuously growing and the other person either is, but really maybe not on the same trajectory as you and not on the same, because everybody's not, like you said, everybody has their own purpose and everybody's on their own path. Everybody grows at their own time. But if you've now elevated to a certain space and they no longer understand you, you grow apart, and they just want the old you to be there so that you can stay with them, right? And stay with them on that same plane. And I've realized, I mean, that's happened with me in friendships, relationships, family dynamic, whatever it is, where it's like I've continued to go to a certain space and we no longer match up anymore. Not that I don't love them, it's not that I don't care, it's not that I won't be there for them, but I know that I have to let certain people kind of just be them and move on kind of out of my space so that I can keep elevating. And I think the hardest thing that I've learned in my own experience with it and what I've heard other people speak of is sometimes it feels really lonely, right? It feels really lonely sometimes because you're like, man, I used to have all these friends, I used to have all these people around me, and now it's like it seems to be a little harder to find people that match that same energy. But if you just continue on that, you don't get fearful and fall back into your old ways, you'll end up attracting the people that do match your energy.
Well, excuse me. I think that that's a natural part of the process of awakening. And when you start actually coinciding and working with God, God will take, sometimes God will take people or places or things that you never realized that weren't meant for you in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, so, uh, but on the flip side of that, let's say you're on your sort of like quote unquote ascension, right? What I've learned, and we were talking about a little bit of this off camera, is that like we said, everyone has their own journey, and control comes down to everything in life. So a lot of times as humans, we try to control. We're like, oh no, this is out of control, blah blah blah. But what I've learned is, like I said before, is to just try not to do God's job. Just
Hmm.
be still.
Hmm.
Because oftentimes, and if another thing I've learned is that when you're going through your own growth, when people are trying to, when they become kind of like fearful, or maybe your growth is making them face that mirror like you talked about, um like don't allow, like what I've learned is also don't allow your past to dictate your present or to dictate your future, because you could be the worst human being 5 years ago, and in 5 years you could have changed completely to be a totally different person, but those people still hold those old memories of you. So in their mind you're still that version that was crappy, and they won't even recognize you, because but in that process God's like, this is exactly what I made you for, is to show people the light of truth or light. And I think that if we ever got to the point of we don't have to learn anything anymore, I think life would be a little boring.
Absolutely. I feel like life would be pointless at that time, right? I mean, the learning aspect is what makes it interesting. um and have fun while you're learning, have fun while you're doing it, um yeah, I completely agree with you. Like you said, so that's why you say, like, don't carry your past. I tell people your past doesn't matter because your past doesn't exist. It's not in the present moment, right? Your past only existed in that present moment, right? It was still the present moment. And like you said, but people will have an image of you in their mind. That's why people say, oh, people never change. The reason they say that is because they still have that old image of you and they're holding on to that, but you have changed immensely. And the folks that actually have known you and see you change and they're cheering you on, they're going to be like, wow, you've changed for the better. Like, you're a different person. You're more patient. You're more loving. You're more kind. But then you have the folks that probably haven't grown, and they want to see you still at the old version because it makes them feel better about themselves, right? I mean, that's that old adage, misery loves company, right? So when someone's still very unhappy with themselves, still has their own wounds inside, they're like, wait a minute, why are you not unhappy anymore? Why are you living in peace now? Right? Because they can't figure out internally how to get there. And that's why I say it's like every single one of our jobs is to go within ourselves. The answers are there, right? All the answers lie within. So go within yourself and you'll start to see the things like, wow. see your patterns, see your decisions that you've made, the things that you've done in life that haven't led you to the life you want, and you make change. We're always pointing at everyone else and saying that it's all the world's fault that we are the way we are, or the things you've been through. The things you've been through were literally there to make you grow, right? The discomfort was to make you grow. The horrible experiences were to make you grow. That's all it was. It's not there for something you to hold on to for the rest of your journey and say, yeah, this is why I am the way I am. You can change the way you are. You don't
Dude,
have to claim your story.
that's so that is so true. How many people blame everything else for every problem that they have? When you get to the point where you can start asking yourself, what part do I play in this? What am I doing? What can I change about, not I can't change the situation, but you can change how you react to it. That's
Mhm.
so true. So many people don't take accountability. Like, if a plane fell on my house right now, right? That would suck. That's an extreme example. But if I get angry and I'm like, oh, or something happens, or I don't know, that's a bad example. Uh, but how you react to things matters.
Mhm.
And so many people, just like how you have to focus internally to grow, so many people go external to blame the problems that they have on everything else but what is within themselves also. So it's kind of like I don't want to say double-edged sword, but it's both sides of the coin. Like, okay, you have this problem or you have this trouble in your relationship, but what actions or inaction are you not seeing? What are you not
Mhm.
seeing? You know what I mean? I think it's a good point.
Yeah, what are you not doing to change the circumstances, right? If you don't like what you have in your life, if you don't like the situation you're in, what are you doing to change it? Are you changing yourself? Because that's the thing is first and foremost, that's the thing I do now every day is I look at myself. If I have a situation and I didn't like the interaction, the first thing I do is look at myself after the interaction's over and say, what did I do that I can do differently? Right? What could I have done better to make that a better interaction? Do I clearly often see other people's things? Of course, but I also just first and foremost focus on myself, and then I will try to help others. Hey, this is probably what you could have done as well. But if they're not ready to hear it, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say is that you can, and we've talked about this before, but that's why I said it's an individual. It's everyone's journey is their own individual, like their own relationship with God. So
Hmm.
if you, as an individual, are, drinking every night of the week, partying, doing drugs, watching Netflix until midnight, eating all the food in the kitchen every day, all you're doing is trying to fill a void you don't even know exists.
Exactly.
And what you don't realize is that you're suppressing your own growth. And then once you're not, if you don't have that spark of realization, like, holy crap, what do I need to change about myself? Then you're never going to grow because it all comes from within yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the thing I had to do. I mean, like I think we've talked about it. Maybe we talked about it last week, but over this last year or a little more than a year, I feel like I've had so much more growth than I ever had in the last, since I started doing the deep work in 2017. I really started looking at myself and looking at my patterns and looking at the way I responded to things, like you said, reaction to events, even reaction to events from my past. And I realized how I was carrying those things into my present over and over and over. And I went to the root of it and basically killed that root. It's just like if you want to kill a weed, you got to get to the root of it. Well, it's the same thing within ourselves, right? You got to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem typically does come from experiences that you either learned, experiences that you had. And you have to realize, like, I don't need to carry that anymore if I want to live a life of being empowered. You have to release everything that you've ever gone through. You have to understand it was all there for purpose, and that you're now in a space, and you're always in a space where you can make decisions to make life better. God's going to give you scenarios and situations, and you have a plethora of decisions you can make that will either give you the outcome that's favorable for you or the outcome that is not. And like you said, I think a lot of times we face situations or don't face the situations inside of us and we numb, like you said, whether it be via alcohol, drugs, sex, TV, food, whatever it is, people are finding ways to numb the bigger issue, right? And the bigger issue always lies inside of you. So, like I tell people, go within, face those things, face the discomfort, let the feelings come through you, and then recognize what is it have that I've been doing, repeatedly in my life that has led me to the same outcome, right? I had that experience in relationships where it's okay, I had to look back on all my relationships and say, what is it that I've been doing? What was my part in all of it that was continuously allowing me to have the same outcome in a relationship, right? And I saw my patterns in every relationship, even in dating relationships. I was like, wow, I understand now the things I've been doing that have been causing the situations, right? Granted, it's both sides, so the other people had their things too, but I can only fix the stuff that the stuff that I was doing and the problems that I was causing. So I've been able to shift a lot of that. Am I still working on that? Of course, but because I've now shifted those things, I make better decisions and I don't repeat those same things. I'm getting better outcomes just in my life itself, right? Um, but what does that take? Again, facing all of my own shit.
Yeah.
I can sit here and point at everybody else, which is what I did oftentimes in relationships in the past, was point at other people and be like, oh yeah, they're fucked up. Well, hey buddy, so are you, right? And once I was able to face my so am I and just look at me, I'm able to change my actions and my decisions. Um, and like I said, doing so has allowed me to be a lot better in that relationship dynamic. But again, the other side of it is if the other people aren't doing the work and they're not committed to the work, then that situation is going to fall apart. It's going to fall away, right? Because you're continuing to elevate, the other side isn't, and you move on.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I've experienced, like even in my own marriage, I've experienced one person being ascending, one person kind of being stuck. And I'm not judging anyone, but in a way, I've been blessed for myself to realize that. And I'm not perfect. There's still button heads and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I've realized, like, oh, it's kind of a little blessing to have a partner where you understand, like, oh, this person's at this level,
Mm-hmm.
or this person's a little bit ahead of me. And you kind of make that. It's weird to try to talk about it because most people probably don't even realize it,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're not as in tune with these types of things like you and I are. No offense to anyone, obviously, but uh, when you can find someone, or you may butt heads, or you may, have disagreements or whatever, or disagreements, but you can work through that and be like, that's what, there's two things that come to mind with what you said is that God created all of us. And I heard this one quote where it says, oh, there's some people that said, oh, I'll follow God when the chains fall off, right? But what the person said is that no, stand and then the chains will fall off.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you have to take a stand, not like aggressively, but sort of like spiritually, like stand up in faith and keep moving forward. And then all the things that are, gnawing at your ears and holding you back will sort of shift away once you start stepping in with where that faith comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then another part is that what I've learned is that I kind of said it already, but everyone's on their own journey. So like we might be at the Daytona 500 we're running circles, and the other person's on a John Deere lawnmower, like a water boy.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, we're still even though we talked about being human beings, not human doings. The second part of that is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that once you understand the worst, I get it. The worst part is understanding and the other person not.
Mm-hmm.
That is the worst part. Like for you and me, we've talked about that, where it's like, why do we see through all this nonsense, but nobody else does?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the most annoying part, but we have to learn to, in any situation, whatever it is, to have a little bit of grace and be like, oh, that person, even that difficulty that person is going through is still yet their own journey.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for you, like people like you and me, where like we've either are going through it or we've been through that fire, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone is kind of dragging behind, as humans, we're supposed to pick each other up and be like, hey, but at the same sense, if that person is not willing to take that hand and be like, okay, help me, then the only way you can help another person is if they're willing to help themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's a difficult thing to be in sometimes. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's not that, we're better than anybody or anybody's better than anybody. I mean, a lot of the other podcasts that I listen to, a lot of people are awakening and very much seeing the truth in things and understanding that we're all on our own journey and everybody's growing at a different pace. Like that's what I've understood, like you said. Like you gave the analogy of like us being at the, Daytona 500 and somebody on like a tractor. It's like, some people are growing quickly, some people it takes a little longer. I mean, like for me, I feel like I started really kind of on this path in 2017, and it's taken me all the way till now to actually see some of the stuff that I kept hearing from my spiritual mentors, but I wasn't actually embodying and living, right? Because I would hear it and then I'd go right back to what I knew before because it's the old self that always wants you to come back to what you've known. Um, and that's where you have to let the old self die and you have to keep moving forward, right? And so I understand everybody's on their own path and everybody's going at their own pace, and I'm okay with that. I try to be very compassionate. I'm not perfect at that, but I try to be very compassionate of it and understand, okay, they're still not seeing beyond that veil, right? And so I'm like, let me help you lift that veil. The thing I realized with that too is that I can say the same thing 5,000 times, and if the person's soul isn't at the space of actually taking it into the heart and understanding it intellectually, they'll tell me, I get it. And then 5 minutes later, they'll be doing the same thing because they actually don't see it clearly yet. Right. And I was there too. And so because I see that and I understand it, I try to give compassion. But again, like you said, if I'm reaching my hand out and the person's not willing to humble themselves enough to grab it and be like, all right, let's go, then I have to understand that there's a certain time to say, okay, I'm here for you. I love you, but I got to let you go because I got to keep going and I can't keep staying in this space. Right.
No, that's a good point, because that's just like what we talked about with the more you try to grab onto something, the more it tends to slip out of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's that same concept of, like I said, if someone's not willing, that what you just said actually is the key. If someone's not willing to humble themselves enough to acknowledge the help, or maybe too prideful to say, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, or the word that comes to mind is, it's like a trap.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I've been there recently, so I've been in my own traps that I was like, why am I doing this again? What the heck?
Mm-hmm.
And I go through that little dark night of the soul. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Like we talk about, you'll keep repeating the same experiences until you learn the lesson and practice what you learn. So I think that, it kind of reminds me of, to get out of that trap, whatever it is, whether it's alcohol, sex, drugs, scrolling on your phone all night, that could be a trap. We're not designed to look at screens all the time, which we've talked about in other episodes, but a lot of, what the problem is it's so easy It's so easy to fall into those types of traps when you don't do that inner work.
Hmm.
So yeah.
I feel like it's just all traps of the ego, right? Because the ego wants you to always be comfortable. And like we've talked about before, it's false comfort. So our old habits, our old things that are keeping us numb, our ego, makes us believe that that's where we're supposed to be. Hey, I feel good when I do this. I feel good when I'm not facing the things that I need to face, right? Um, but we have to understand that if you let go of all the things that are impeding on your growth and step into the discomfort, at the other side of that discomfort is beauty. And I say that all the time. I've experienced that myself. Like, okay, I've known this habit for a long time, and it's just like before, right? Like I talked about it on here before, shoot, on podcasts in the past, like I was still drinking and doing those things. And what I realized was drinking was one of those things that was just numbing me out and honestly like blocking my growth because I wasn't seeing things clearly. That was the thing that I could easily go back to. What did my ego tell me though? You have fun with this. I'm not saying you can't have fun with having a drink, but if those drinks are the thing you're going to that's supposedly the only thing that's fun, or the only way you can supposedly be yourself, then you got to realize that's just a trap. Like you said, that's a trap that's pulling you back and holding you down. When you can start to become comfortable within yourself and not have anything external that's supposedly bringing you joy, then you really know yourself, right? Like I can find joy in the simplest things now without letting the ego tell me you need this thing to make this thing fun. I don't need anything external to enjoy my life. I can enjoy the most mundane things now. But I also know that, again, like I find joy in everything. I also just in this journey I've just been learning about who I really am. I'm a person that's I like freedom. I like change. I'm okay with things shifting and moving all the time, because I like the newness of things, right? Um, and that's something I had to come into realization with because for a long time I tried to live more structured and rigid, and that was being totally false to who I actually am. That was a trap that I was hearing from the world. You need to have constant structure and rigidity to get things done, basically a type A personality. Well, the type A personality that I carried for so long didn't fit, and I always wondered why I was like pushing against something, right? Because my soul was like, you're more carefree and you're more easy flowing, which my mom even said, she goes, you were that way as a child. Like you were always just carefree. Everything was kind of just a joke, not too serious. That's genuinely who I am. But the world was making me fall into a trap and say you won't get anything done. I get way more done just having fun and like enjoying everything than I did when I was had a checklist of shit I needed to do. You know what I mean? And I realize I can look at my life now and I'm like, when I turned everything I do, whether it was owning a business, when I was a paramedic, in a job, whatever, like when I turn each thing I do into fun and let it be very free flowing and carefree, I get a whole lot more done than I did when I was rigid and had to have a set schedule and do everything perfectly. So I tell people that's even a trap from the ego itself, right? It's telling you like you need to be this way. This is what the world tells you. I don't need to be anyway. I don't need to fit into shit. I can always just be myself, and I live a way better life and a way more carefree life, and I live with way less stress.
You know what? It made me think about uh one of these videos I was listening to, and the gentleman on there was talking about how, he's like, people ask me all the time, how can I get the world to like me better? And he's like, be worldly. You can either please the world or you can please God. And I think that that's an amazing way to put it, because when you think about society, life, whatever, it's a little gray area. But what I've learned is that, what I've learned is that the older I get, the less tolerance I have for other people trying to tell me what to do.
100%.
The less tolerance I have for, if I know in my being what I'm doing is right, and someone's like, no, you got to do it this way, I'm like, don't talk to me.
Exactly.
That's not even, it sounds like pride, but it's, to other people, it seems like pride sometimes. But I don't have tolerance for other people's nonsense when I know, like, okay, you're at the level of society where you think there's only one way to do something, or there's only one way to live life. But then you interact with, we've experienced this, Brian, where you interact with people like us and we're like, no, it's bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to control everything, and you're you're impeding the natural flow of how things could be if you just let go.
Yeah.
Right? That's so much of the world. Instead of trying to please the world, try to please the one who made you.
And you know how you please the one who made you? By being your authentic self, because God sent us all to be our own soul on our own journey, to be our own way and to express our own light, right? And so, kind of like I tell people, like you just said, when people are telling me this is the one right way to do things, I'm like, there's a billion right ways to do things. I can get things done being very carefree and free flowing, but people will tell me that's not the right way to do it because they are following a way that they were probably programmed with. They were told this is the only way to do things. Now, I don't know if we touched on this on the last podcast, I can't remember, but the thing I've been telling people a lot lately, I said, you have these people that I'm not telling you they're not people that haven't studied into certain situations and things for so long. We have people writing books saying that this is the best way to be a parent. This is the best way to be in a relationship. And I tell people, how can you possibly tell a world of 8 or 9 billion souls that are all different that this is the one right way to do it when we're all different purposely, and you're going to find your own way to do things that work well for you, right?
Well, that's the challenge, is that there's so many intricacies and so many details that a book isn't going to be able to cover.
Exactly. And that's the point, right? So like I tell people, do like you said, do what works for you, and then you will end up matching up to a soul that you'll be able to flow together. You're still going to have differences, but you'll be able to understand each other a little bit more deeply, and you'll be able to flow a little bit more effortlessly, right? And so don't try to find the one way that worked for someone else. Find what works for you and take that and run with it. So it's kind of like you were saying, with people telling us, I don't feel like it's pride. I feel like when someone's telling me this is the only way to do it, I'm like, believe me, I found ways that work for me, and I'm still effective. I'm still getting things done. I'm still being a greater person, or being a greater person in a relationship, whatever the case is. I've just found what works for me, right? And it's not going to be what you're telling everybody is the only way to do it. And so I tell people, why don't you just let everybody kind of figure out their own way, right? When I ran my business, I used to tell my staff, like, train the way you want to train. Use the gifts you have. Bring the energy you bring. It's going to be different than mine. Don't copy me. Do what you want to do, right? Because the only reason I'm effective in this is because my energy affects people differently than yours does, right? I may have them do, so I put it to the aspect of like whether I'm physically training somebody or mentally training somebody, I may be using some of the same exercises or the same mental exercises that other people do, but I'm bringing a different dynamic to it because I'm bringing my energy and I'm putting a different swing on it, right? That's getting certain souls to understand it more deeply, or to enjoy it more, or to go beyond the limits they put on themselves. But that's because that's a gift God gave me, right? And I just do it in a different way. So I've never told people this is the only way you can teach people, or like when I teach meditation, I always tell people there's a million ways you can meditate. There's different forms of meditation. There's TM, there's walking meditation, there's lying meditation, there's different things. But like I tell people, do what works for you, right? And don't try to make your mind do anything. Don't meditate with an outcome. I'm like, meditate with like knowing that overall it's going to enhance your peacefulness. It's going to reduce your reactiveness, right? Or like I tell people when they're working out, I'm like, there's all different forms of exercise that will still get your body to a healthier state, but do what you enjoy. If you don't enjoy moving weights, but you enjoy jujitsu, go do that. If you don't enjoy jujitsu or moving weights and you enjoy hiking up a mountain, go do that. You're still getting movement in the body, you're still getting that medicine, but you're doing what you enjoy. So like I tell people too, that's the other thing is I always try to express to folks, do what brings you joy. So the movement in your body, what activities bring you joy? Do it, right? The type of meditation, the type of peacefulness, quietness, mindfulness that brings you joy when you do it, do it. Don't try to do what everybody else is doing or what people are telling you should be doing, because if you don't enjoy it, that's going to cause a natural, I don't want to do this, right?
Mhm.
And then that's why people give up. People are like, I don't want to go work out. I don't like moving weights. I don't want to sit and meditate because I don't like sitting and meditating. But that's why I tell people, maybe you'll like doing a walking meditation in nature. Maybe you'll like doing CrossFit. Maybe you'll like doing swimming, maybe, pickleball, whatever you got to do that brings you joy, but do those actions. Yeah, they are an action of movement. We know movement's medicine for the body. We know mindfulness is medicine for the mind. So do find what works for you, because we're all different. Same thing in a relationship, right? When people say we go on relationships, people say you're supposed to get married, have kids, and be together till you die. That doesn't work for everybody. For some people, it could be You have a relationship. I don't want to have children. I don't want to be married. You know, you're in the relationship for a while and you're like, okay, you know, like this is no longer flowing the way I want it to. I can let this go and I can allow both parties to move on to something different. Be okay with that shift and what works for you. Don't try to fit into a mold that somebody's handed you, which is typically what happens in this life. And that's why I've been such a big advocate for not doing that, is not being a conformist. Don't conform to what people say is the norm, because if it doesn't feel right for you, your soul's straight up telling you that that's not for you.
Yeah, I think something I am learning is so much in our worldly lives we're taught, oh, pursue happiness. And what I've started to learn is that instead of pursuing happiness, we should pursue inner peace. Because I think, kind of like what we talked about in the last episode, of those four different planes of like emotional, spiritual, physical, and mental. Emotions, whether it's happiness or anger or whatever, they're still temporary. What I'm starting to learn is, when your mind is peaceful, in turn everything else will be peaceful. So what I'm trying to pursue now is what brings me peace, not necessarily what makes me happy. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's great, because actually I had that conversation recently with somebody where I said, you know what, I think everyone actually is pursuing. People say, a lot of people will say love. I think actually what everybody's pursuing is peace, right? People really just want peace. There's nothing more valuable than your own internal peace, right? So live a life, form a life, like in the parts that you can do, create and remove things that only bring you peace. And peace for you may not be peace for another, right? And so I tell people, what is it? You're correct. You're 100% correct. In my opinion, is that, like, what is it that brings you absolute peace in your life? If it's quietness and solitude, then do that, right? If it's being around a ton of people and a ton of energy, then do that. But whatever it is that brings you peace, do more of that. And on the other side of that is whatever is disturbing your peace, you need to remove, right? If you live in a place that disturbs your peace, move. If you're in a relationship that disturbs your peace, let it go. If you're in a job that disturbs your peace, let it go. Shift jobs. Like, literally be okay with removing anything that is stepping in the way of you having that internal peace, right? People will stay in situations, again, because of a belief system, and it's completely disturbing their peace and their natural flow of life. But why? Because of fear, because of worry, because of concern. I tell people, be okay with letting anything go that is not bringing you that absolute peace.
Well, you know what the issue is that, yes, exactly, fear. But the greatest growth you will get is when you accept being able to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what that discomfort is it's ultimately fear,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's fear of the unknown.
Yeah, it's
Most people,
uncomfortable.
most people are avoiding the unknown because, what if this turns out this way? When we don't live in the what ifs and we step into the fear and step into the unknown, we usually end up having a beautiful outcome. Even if it wasn't the outcome your human mind was hoping would happen, once again, you experienced something great. You learned something, maybe you had some fun doing it in the process of it. Um, but either way, it was worth it, because, again, the thing that people regret most at the end of life, if you get to live till you're older, isn't the things that they tried and didn't work out the way they wanted them to. It's the things that they didn't try, right? So I always say, step into whatever it is you want to do. I mean, step into all of the unknowns you possibly can. Allow God to lead you into these things that you're like, hey, I have no clue how this is going to end up, but I guarantee it's going to be something great. At the very least, I'm going to learn something. So I still experienced growth with that experience that I had no clue how it was going to end up. Because I don't ever
Yeah.
think that there's any such thing as a bad outcome to anything. I think that, honestly, it's all there for a purpose, and it's all there to, like I said, if you got growth from it, why is it a bad outcome? If you start a business and it fails, what did you learn in the process of it, right? If you jump into a relationship and it doesn't end up the way you thought it was, what did you learn from that? Everything you do is giving you some sense of growth, some sense of, joy, whatever it is. Just be willing to go into all the unknowns and have fun with it. Once again, like I think I said last podcast, this game is one big giant play. It's a big playground. This life is, I think I said this game. This life is like one big playground. This life is one big game. Have fun with it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's between you and God, not anybody else. So actually, as you were talking, Brian, you said it, but even if you fail, there's still something to learn from it.
Absolutely. And is there anything as an actual failure anyway? Because at the end of the day, you grew, you changed, you gained something, whatever it is, right? I mean, like, what does it matter? I mean, what does it matter at the end of the day if something doesn't work out the way your human mind thinks it should, or the way the world tells you it should? It was worth it.
Well,
It was worth the shot, like you said. And it's like having faith. Just go into things with faith. Have faith that it's always working out perfectly. That's it.
it makes me think of the righteous shall fall seven times and rise yet again, right? There's always, in most circumstances, there's always the path to keep moving forward, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you mess up or something doesn't work out, you can still be like, okay, I still have breath in my lungs, so I can still, keep moving forward and not get. A lot of people get hung up on things, and it's like, okay, but that's not going to help you.
Exactly.
You gotta let go.
Well, that's what we talked about off camera. It's living without attachment, right? That's one big thing that I've absolutely now embodied is I'm not attached to any outcome to anything. And like we talked about off camera, is a lot of people take that as you don't care. No, I care. I care deeply. I love deeply. I just don't have an attachment to how anything's supposed to end up. You see what I'm saying? I live very free now because I can step into something without any idea of how this thing is supposed to turn out. And however it turns out was exactly how it was supposed to turn out. And I'm okay with that, right? However long that thing, that person, that whatever's supposed to be in my life is there, and then if they're removed, well, it was there for the time it was supposed to be. Because in my belief, there's a divine plan for everything. So if there's a divine plan for everything, why am I getting in the way of that divine plan? I don't need to attach to anything. I can let God bring and remove anything God wants at any time, and I feel okay with it.
That's it makes me laugh, not necessarily because it's funny, but because I think it's true. Is that I saw this one meme where it was like, all right, God, I give up. And the quote underneath it was like, good, now my work can begin.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's kind of like a duality of you have to accept the way you have to accept things for what they are and how they are. But at the same time, when you understand that you don't ultimately have control over every little detail, every little thing, like you said, like how you practice it, that's freeing because now you're aligning yourself with creation itself.
Absolutely. And it's absolutely freeing. I will tell you, for me, the moment I actually realized at the depth of my heart that I don't have control of everything and that I don't need control of everything, it was very freeing. I was like, what? I don't got to do everything all the time to try to make things happen? This is wonderful. It's a very freeing feeling. To know I have no control over people and the outcome of how things are going to go is wonderful because I don't need to know the outcome. I don't need to control how a person acts, what a person does. I get to just let them be them, me be me, and let the situation unfold the way it's supposed to, right? And so it's like it's just a freeing feeling. It takes a weight off your shoulders. You realize you can just breathe.
That's the thing, is like the more you try to control, the heavier you're going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the more things will break away from you. It's also like you're holding on so much that you don't even realize that it's like trying to hold water in your hand, like
Yeah, exactly.
the more you squeeze, the more it comes out.
The more it will elude you. Same thing in life, right? Anything you try to squeeze and grasp onto, it's going to fade away. So let it flow naturally.
Yeah, and I would say instead of have the realization that emotions are temporary, so you should pursue peace over all things.
Yep,
Like
absolutely.
when a conflict comes up, a lot of people, like I know some people are like, "Oh, I want to get back at them." I'm like, "No, just let go and let God, baby.
Yep.
Whatever you do in this life, it comes back around one way or another.
Hmm.
So let
Hmm.
it go.
Yep.
It's okay."
Energetically, it will return. So,
I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, it's natural to feel certain emotions, especially if something like bad happens or whatever, or something that's not just happens. But what I've learned is you know, like when I had my son in the hospital and the what I told you about with the freaking ER, I was
mhm,
like, dude, I was outside. I was like, all right, God, I'm pretty mad right now, but I trust you. And now everything's fine.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
but any
No,
closing thoughts, sir?
um, just kind of what we've been touching on in the podcast is learn to surrender, learn to let go, allow for the natural flow, the divine flow that's trying to take place in your life. Allow it. Don't fight it. Don't try to control it, and watch how things will unfold much better than you can imagine.
Amen. Well, that's all the time we got today, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you on the next one. Sending you guys all love.